have said that a lot of modern analog synthesizers don't sound like analog synthesizers. I've also said that a lot of classic DCO synths don't sound like analog synthesizers. And this has been something that a lot of people have been frustrated by. But I want to explain that a person like me celebrates analog synthesizers because of how analog synthesizers originally sounded back in the 1970s. In the 1990s, when the analog resurgence started, it started with people like me who said, you know, these digital synths are super powerful, but they lack this beauty in their sound. They lack this character, this tone. And where is that tone coming from? And it became evident that there are several different factors that play a role in tone. Now, everyone always thinks, well, it's the filter. It's got to be an analog filter. But I got to say, there are analog filters that are extremely icy. But still, they're better than a lot of digital filters were, which is what gave us the enthusiasm about the analog filters. Anyway, the point of the matter is one of the major elements that gives analog sound such a warmth is its tuning instability. Now, immediately everyone talks about drift, and they're like, oh, there's drift. What drift is when a synthesizer is in tune and then goes out of tune. Or when a single oscillator is in tune and then over time goes out of tune. That happens with vintage analog synthesizers, and it does play a role, but that's not the main way that tuning plays an important role. Tuning needs to vary constantly to really give a great analog sound. You need your oscillators to be unstable. Now, the great thing about the Arturia PolyBrute is they have wired in specific ways to get a unstable sound, which is really helpful because all of the great polysynths that you want from the past had a certain lack of stability. And you can generate that digitally or manually, as I will show you. This is how you can get some tuning variation into your PolyBrute patch. It's really easy. All you have to do is hold settings, go over to fine tune, turn the knob, and it gives you several different settings here of different tuning variations that exist. One is off and everything's sort of static. Then 2 is mild and mild. There's 2 and 3 are mild, some sort of exponential variation, some sort of linear variation. And then 4 is what I always set it on, which is wild. Now, it may not be immediately evident that you have pitch variation. That's kind of what you want. But here, I think we can kind of show that there is. Listen to the way that those two notes phase. As they phase, what you're actually hearing is basically them varying in pitch. So that just means that each of those notes are a little bit unstable, which is the way that vintage analog synths sound. Because the technology wasn't such that really rock solid tuning was possible. So what you get are this delicious sort of warmth that we realized existed when we had the ability to make pitches really, really stable. And we were like, wow, that sounds incredibly sterile. This is why DCOs are bad. Now all of those frequencies are beating against each other in ways that we actually look for in analog synthesizers. And sometimes it's going to sound out of tune. You're actually going to hear in a lot of my demonstrations, the synthesizer being out of tune. And I do that on purpose. I prefer it. So that's what's going on with that. Another thing we can do, we've already talked about how great it is that all of the LFOs are independent. A way that we can really sort of bring about some serious change in frequency if we wanted to do it. Here's what you do. Just go into mods, go to your independent oscillator frequency, And then once you have that, go down to your LFO. So we can hear that the LFO is insanely modulating the frequency of oscillator 1 here. Put it in poly so you have independent modulation from each of the 6 LFOs that exist in LFO 1. Yes, that's incredibly irritating. So then what we do, let's slow it down. Let's put it on the random setting, which is a sample and hold that is lagged. So instead of being stair steps, it's just wiggling. So that's what it sounds like. And then let's bring this down, the amount down to almost nothing. You can hear the phasing happening because each of these notes is independently modulated to a very tiny degree, the same sort of vague discrepancy you might get in an older analog synthesizer where the oscillators are struggling to keep in tune. And that is what you're looking for. And keep in mind that you can actually do that same LFO trick in other ways that also slightly damage the waveform, in addition to the tuning that you're actually, the sort of vintage analog tuning you're capable of creating with this.